G'day, I'm Alistair Christie, and I've been using Delphi since about version 3, although I first learnt to program using Turbo Pascal 5.5 many a year ago. In my spare time, I on occasion produce videos, usually shorter than this one, on using Delphi and various related topics, which you can find on my website, codegearguru.com, or on YouTube, youtube.com/codegearguru. Why I chose that domain name now confounds me, but oh well. IntraWeb is basically VCL for the web, and it has been called that for a couple of Delphi releases, but thankfully it has been renamed back to IntraWeb in Delphi XE2. IntraWeb allows you to build applications in a very similar way to how you build your Windows VCL applications, with labels, edit boxes, and data-aware goodness. This allows you to take your Delphi Windows skills and build applications for the web. Applications you build with IntraWeb are not very webby, however. They behave differently from a conventional website. For example, in the default behavior, the back button doesn't work, and the entire site is accessed via a single URL. Which means that if you want to build a website, you're probably better off with more traditional methods, ASP, PHP, Rails, etc. With Delphi XE2, you get the new IntraWeb 12, which has 3 flavors. Personal, which comes with Delphi Professional, Professional, which comes with Delphi Enterprise or Architect, and Ultimate, which you have to buy. There is also an evaluation version if you want to trial it. The stuff in this video should work with any of the IntraWeb editions. However, if you're running an older version of Delphi Professional, you might run into problems. In this video, we will take a quick look at the workings of IntraWeb and then write a variant on the classic Fishfax application. So let's start by writing a new IntraWeb application, and we create a Delphi Projects IntraWeb application wizard, and in that we fill in a project name, IW6. And we're just going to create a standalone application. Now, 4 units have been created for us. Firstly, the project file, then the server controller, which we access the server properties on, and the only one that we're interested in here is the application name property. Everything else we can not worry about for now. The third file is the user session unit, and this one of these gets created for each user that connects, and it lives for about 20 minutes and then dies if there's no activity. And it's basically a data module, and we're not going to worry about it at this stage. And finally is our form, and this is what the end user sees, and we can throw on a whole bunch of controls on here from the tool palette in the IW lists, and we're just going to be grabbing stuff from the IW standard set, in particular a label, button, and edit. And I'm just going to write a very trivial application. Oops. And that is about as simple as it gets. And let's shift that up there and run it. And that starts for us our IntraWeb server, which is it's basically a web server. So this is the standalone IntraWeb server, and we can fire up a web browser, and it basically works. So, and we can do the usual, setting of breakpoints and all that kind of thing. So it works just like developing any other Delphi application, and you can inspect properties and all that kind of thing. So how does this work? Well, let's fire up the developer tools. And so here's our HTML body, and we notice that there's in the onload there's an initialize function. So if we go hunt that down, we find it here, and it calls a bunch of other stuff. In particular, it sets up the on-click event for our button, and in the on-click event it calls another JavaScript function, which eventually calls back into the server, and that is defined in IW Common, I think. So that's basically how the JavaScript side of it works, and the actual clicking of the button and how it gets back to the server. If you look at the controls, we'll see here's our label, and it's created a form for us which holds our button and edit box. And you'll see there's no layout information here, but it does define some CSS, which back up here gives us the exact positions of all the controls. So it's per pixel accuracy with the layouts. So that's basically how an IntraWeb application works. So next we'll be writing a very simple application, basically the Fishfax application. Let's start by creating a new project, and we'll make it a VCL for the web application, or IntraWeb. And we'll call it IW Fishfacts. Okay. And on our form, let's get some data. So client data set, and data source. I'll call this fish, and assign local data. Nope. We will load data from MyBase table, and we'll go find the sample data, and we want the BioLife, which is our fish data. Okay, so now let's throw a grid on there, and we'll throw in the IWDB grid. I'll be exceedingly lazy and just go align to client and set the data source. And let's run that and have a look. So here we have our Fishfax data that we know and love and probably have seen 100 times if you've been using Delphi for a while. And what we'll do is we'll eliminate some of the fields. And we do that in the columns property. So I'll add 2 columns. The first column being the common name, and the second the species number, length in centimeters. And I'll just change the title. To get rid of the underscore. And run that, have another quick look. Okay, so a bit more easily managed, but I'm going to simplify it even further I'm going to turn off use size and use frame, and let's change the caption. And run that again. Okay, so we have a nice, very simple list. And what we're going to do is convert these names to links and show us more details about each fish. Okay, before we get too carried away, let's rename this to fish list and call this IWF fish list and save all. So our next step is to create the links, and what we need to do is define a link field on our common name column, and I'll make that species number and check some code in the onClick. So I'm just going to start by doing a show message of the value, and what we get is a grid with a bunch of links, and if I click on one of them, it gives us the species number. Okay, so now we want to show more details about our fish, so we're going to need a new IntraWeb form. So we'll call the unit fish details, and the form IWF fish details. Okay, and what we could do is use our fish list unit to access the fish data, but what I'm going to do is it'll be much nicer to shift that into a data module, and we have one pre-created for us. It's the user session, so I'll throw those on there. And from our fish list, use unit user session, and then we can hook up the data source again, and we can do the same thing, but I'm going to be a little bit more advanced than that, because you might need more than one data module in your application, or you want to share a data module between many applications. So what I'm going to do is create a new other Delphi files data module and call it fish and DM fish. So we'll just throw our data source and data set on there, and now to access it, in a normal Delphi application you'd use this global variable to access it, but IntraWeb applications are multi-threaded, and you'd have multiple users accessing the exact same client dataset, which would cause you grief probably. So I'm just going to define a function, and in our user session unit I'm going to use fish data, and Control-Shift-A on the keyboard, and hopefully it will find our fish data and add that to the uses automatically. And I'm just going to create that on startup. free it as well. Okay, and then in our fish data, to access the user session unit, that is actually in the server controller. Which I'll have a quick look at. And we have this function to grab the user session. And we need to return it. So we get a user session for each user, so that means each user will get a fish data module. And in theory, if we go to the fish list and I hook that up, if we use the unit, and run that, and fingers crossed, we'll still get our fish grid. And we do. Okay, and let's save that. After all that, we're ready to have a bit of a play with our fish details. So add some DB labels. Okay, and the first one, in fact all of them, we'll assign the data source, which we need to use our fish data unit. And I'll make this one common name. And we'll make the font nice and big. And the remaining ones, category, species name, and I suppose length in centimeters. And throw some labels in there. And change the captions on them to match. A DB text and a DB image. And that of course becomes our graphic. And we want some notes. Perfect. So something like that. And what I'll also do is I'll add a DB Navigator. And we'll get rid of some of the buttons we're not interested in. And finally a button. Which is going to be a back button. And to go back, there's two ways of doing it. One would be to hide the form, but what I'm going to do is release it, which hides and frees it. Okay, and that all looks hooked up. So we go to our fish list, and rather than doing show message, we're going to want to first thing we need is to find the species based on the key we've got, which is the species number. Fish details. So create a new one and shot. And hopefully, okay, so it all looks pretty good except our fish is and our fish is too big and our navigator is not hooked up, but the back works. So just hook that up, and on the fish graphic, I want to use size, and we'll just verify that that's worked. And we can go back. Okay, and let's save our project again. Our next step will be to do a fish editor. So throw another button on there, and oops, that didn't work very well. Okay, so we are going to need yet another form. Okay, and on this one, I'll add some DB edits and a DB memo. Okay, we'll just make them all nice and large, and we'll use our data module. And we'll hook them up. And just add some fields to be able to edit. Species name and category. And this of course will be our notes. And we'll throw a bunch of labels on. Let's try and line up the top edges. Adjust the captions again. Common name, species name, category, and notes. So add a couple of buttons. Oops, cancel. Okay, so in our save, oops, post our changes and release our form. And in cancel, we're going to do something very similar. And as per usual, call it fish editor and IWF fish editor. And from our details, in here we want to edit the data. We want the fish editor, so let's use the unit. And create an instance and show it. And run it. Okay, and edit. And I can throw an exclamation mark on the end there, save it, and it saves, but it doesn't save it to disk because we're using an in-memory dataset. And that's easily proved. Just run that again. And we've got no exclamation mark on the end there. So to do that, we need to go to our fish data. Now we could add a file name property onto this and it would save it, but with multiple users editing fish, it would be the last person in, who saves the data, and someone's going to lose out. So what I've done is I've created a Firebird version of the DB demos and BioLife, so I'll just drag and drop a copy of that, and we're going to need a provider which we need to hook up to the BioLife table. Our client dataset is going to need to point to our provider, and I'll set active to true. So if we run this now, and I've done everything correctly, add our exclamation mark and save it, and we can load up a new instance. And it didn't work because I forgot a very important thing to do, and that's apply the changes back. So after post, apply updates, and we'd probably want to do that after delete as well, but not actually allowing people to delete fish in our rather limited example application. Okay, so now the demo should go smoothly. And our exclamation mark, save, and fire up a new, and there it is. In fact, that probably, just to be sure, we'll close out and go back in. And there we have it. And saved. Okay, well, that's more or less our application written. Let's save that. And there's one more thing that we can do, and that's add a login screen. And of course, you probably guessed it, we need a new form. So I'll just throw a couple of edits on there, labels and a button. So let's make that username, password, call this, and oops, did I change no, I changed the text property. Change the name property. And because it's a password field, we'll tick the password prompt. And have a login button. And in that, we'll just and we'll have some really we'll do something else. Okay, so our first thing, actually we should probably call that login, and so give it some meaningful names. Now currently our fish list is our first form that starts up, and that's done through this. So I'm just going to cut that and go to our login code, paste that in, and if we use our fish list, do our usual create and show. So let's run that. Oops. Oh, and it would be quite nice if we started out with some blank text in those. Okay, I try logging in as Alistair. We get an invalid username exception, and log in, and there we have it. So let's save all that. So we'll just do one last final thing, and that's remember the username of the person who successfully logged in, and we'll do that via cookies. So in fact, I will just do a little bit of copy and paste. And in the form create, and we'll run that. And log in, and go in again, and it's remembered. In fact, just double check that. I'm going to shut it down completely. And it's remembered Bob. Okay, and that is the end. If we save all that. You can find more information and resources on IntraWeb at the A to Z website, and you can also get a copy of Bob Swart's IntraWeb book. I hope you've enjoyed this and other presentations at Code Rage 6. I'm Alistair Christie.